So I'm gonna pull this meeting to order at 6:02. Thanks everybody for coming. So we need to approve an agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have a discussion as to the format of the agenda, either now or later.
Okay. So I don't really.
Let's go for
So
later.
it would be later. Yeah, sorry, because I really the focus of tonight's meeting is really the community engagement piece. So, but can we do it later? Do you mind?
Sure.
Okay. So I appreciate that. All right. So adding that to our agenda is
Agenda. That's the
Yeah.
agenda. That's what he wants
Yep.
to talk about.
okay. Any other things? Anything else anybody would like to add? Okay. All those in favor of? Did we get a motion and a second?
Yep.
We did.
We did? Okay, good. So all those that approve the agenda, with the addition of an agenda setting, piece at the end, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? Great. Okay, second, communications with parents, citizens, and staff. Would you like to, oh. Who'd like to go first? Wow, I love it when we have all this, who's, right there is fine. Yes, that'd be great.
Right, so, everyone here knows me, right?
Don't assume that.
Don't assume that, but.
So, my name is Edward. I am the student council president for this year. Today I have two topics to discuss. So last meeting, I discussed plans to rewrite the student handbook. So some updates to that. The plans have changed slightly. When entering the first phase of the rewriting process, we came across the issue of formatting. The student handbook seems to require new formatting. Looking at the table of contents, it's written similar to an index, and it lists a section A but no section B. so we have plans to change that. As a result of changing the format of it, the entire handbook might require a rewrite, but we will use sections from the old handbook. But in the end, it would be like a completely new product. As a result, the final product that will be presented to all of you will, instead of section by section, it will be presented as the actual handbook itself. Because you're only seeing like the final draft of it, we'll have more teacher involvement, faculty involvement throughout the rewriting process. Any questions before I go on to the second topic?
I just have one little question. So the approval of your new student handbook will actually be done at the administrative level, correct? But we would still love to see it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
I don't know like who exactly approves it.
Okay.
I'm assuming that it needs to get approved by administration, school board.
Yep.
Whatever's necessary to approve it.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
Okay.
So, the second topic I would like to discuss. So, student council is interested in having more student representatives to the school board. So before I say anything about it, I would like to ask, what is the actual process to get these new representatives?
So when you ask about, do you want more representatives? Is that what you're asking for?
Basically.
Basically. So like
Especially since there's two senior representatives heading on the way after this year, I'm
Mhm.
interested to know what the process is.
Sure. Do you want to speak to that process?
Sure. Mr. Avery usually puts out a notice to solicit interest of students. And it just so happened that we had two students who came on during their sophomore year who are now seniors, which is not normal. Normally you like to have a senior and a junior, so there's always, some consistency. So normally it's two student reps on the board. So as a result of there being two the same grade level, last year another student stepped forward and said that he was interested, Alex. And the board agreed to add a third student so that there'd be some consistency. This year, as you point out, two students are graduating on. Alex would be remaining, assuming he wants to stay as a student rep. And Mr. Avery should be putting out word once again to solicit more interest. I usually meet with the interested students and kind of discuss what the vision of student representation on the board could be. Students kind of make it from there, personalize it and make it what you know, shape it from there. That process usually, and then there's usually overlap. The new board sits in March, and so we usually have overlap with the new student and the exiting students, maybe the March, definitely the April, May, June meetings. So if there's a sudden rush of, you know, if 2 students step forward, I would have a discussion with the board about would you go with 3 again. If 25 students step forward, we're gonna have to make a choice.
Right. What would the maximum number of representatives at a single time?
The practice has been 2, most recently 3, so 2 to 3.
So,
Although I think the board would probably be open to a proposal if you wanted to propose something different.
right, I'm thinking maybe 4 or 5.
Wow.
I really want to have more student voice from different areas of coming from different places. Because right now, a lot of the student voice in the school is mostly the top performing students, just the highest academic, the most involved. There's no representation anywhere else, and those top performers, that's just 12% of the school. So we're only getting representation for about 12% of the students, and I think that's a problem. I think a good step forward would be to have more students.
May I make another comment?
Sure.
So tonight's meeting, the 3rd Wednesday of every month, this board has set up to be specifically about community engagement. And even without waiting for the board representative process to happen, if student council solicited a number of students interested in participating every 3rd Wednesday at this meeting, the board breaks into different committees and I'm speaking for the board, and I'm not a board member, I work for the board, but I know the
That's all right, keep
purpose
going.
is, the board is really trying to solicit more voices, and it would be a great way, they don't have to be appointed, but they could, you know, if you wanted to communicate with me a number of different names, I'll make sure that they receive emails about these meetings, that they have full participation sooner rather than later.
That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thanks.
We really appreciate it. Mrs. Field, did I see you?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
So I'm Hannah Field, I'm the librarian at Neshabie Elementary School, and I'm coming to you tonight as representative of the NEA, the local association at Neshabie at least. And I've taken on the role of healthcare liaison, and I'm really following somewhat more closely, the negotiations that are happening. And I wanted to talk to you guys. I'm actually going to read some of a statement because despite speaking to students all day, every day, I get nervous when I talk to adults. So it'll help me to read and make sure I cover everything that I'm supposed to say. But the long and short of what I'm going to say is that I'm really hoping that you guys might take some action and contact your representatives in the negotiating committee before we go to binding arbitration.
And you're talking about the negotiation committee for the state? Okay.
I'm talking about states. I'm not
Okay.
talking about what's happening.
Locally? Okay.
So, as you know, statewide negotiations began over healthcare benefits began on April 1st. We have been following the progress of those negotiations and have read proposals of both parties as they've moved through the most recent post-fact-finding mediation on September 23rd. Barring a negotiated agreement, which would happen on October 22nd, that's the next meeting, on November 1st, the 2 sides will present their last best offer to an arbitrator who will make a binding decision, and that arbitrator will choose one proposal or the other. They will not be able to, based on how the legislation was written, create a best solution by combining the 2 proposals that will impact the lives of 34,000 Vermonters working for the school system. Although we recognize that the Vermont School Board Association bargaining proposals are subject to change and have changed modestly since April 1st, we're deeply concerned about the punitive nature of the negotiators' proposals throughout the process. Your negotiators do not seem to understand that what many school employees pay now for health benefits is not affordable. the VHI health insurance coverage, which was something that once not only could employees depend on, but was also a major draw to working in our schools, has often become a cause of medical and economic hardship. And your state negotiators' proposals are making things worse. We know we're not alone, and that there are many, many working families in Vermont who face problems accessing affordable medical care. We teach their children, we care for their children. They're our neighbors, they're our family members, they're our friends, right? We're really familiar with the struggles of everyone accessing affordable medical care. It's unacceptable, it should never happen. We need universal health care in our country. But until that comes, school boards and unions need to work together to make sure that no school employee or family member is deprived of affordable and equitable access to health care. Unfortunately, the proposals of the School Board Association are moving in the opposite direction. At the fact-finding hearing, the School Board Association negotiators proposed subjecting school employees, teachers, and support staff, union and non-union, to at least a 200% increase in out-of-pocket costs, requiring that all support staff, the lowest paid school employees, jump to a 20% premium contribution on the last day of the contract, not expanding access to spousal or family coverage for support staff who have access to only single coverage now, and denying eligibility for health insurance coverages to school year employees who work less than 30 hours a week. At present, for most schools, and I didn't look up what we have, to be honest, the eligibility standard is half, like 17.5 hours. The statewide health benefit settlement needs to be fair to both parties. It needs to ensure that healthcare benefits are affordable and equitable. It needs to achieve access across all tiers of coverage, no matter where employees work or what their job is. It needs to protect or enhance, not reduce, existing coverage rights in local bargaining agreements and school policies. It needs to help school districts, especially those in rural areas, hire and retain high-quality staff. I'll admit personally that the health insurance coverage that the schools offered at the time I took my job was a major draw of coming back to Vermont. And it must reflect the hard lessons that we've learned over the past 22 months that were triggered by the transition to the high deductible health plans that VHI implemented. So what I'm here to ask of you is that respectfully, on behalf of every school employee, union member or not, and I have a petition signed by the teaching staff of Neshabie, we're asking that you contact your school board negotiators before October 22nd, which is the next mediation meeting, and ask them to be realistic and fair-minded when they're determining and structuring cost sharing with their union counterparts. Urge them to drop the rhetoric that they're using, saying that the union representatives have skin in the game and therefore aren't bargaining the way that they should be. And also urge them to work in good faith with the union negotiators to figure out what is affordable and fair to both sides, and put an end to the arbitrary and punitive cost shift. So I have for you contact information for the people who are negotiating for the School Boards Association representing you, also the petition for the Neshabie staff, and a comparison of the two proposals as of the last meeting. I'm gonna leave that, I guess probably with Charlene.
Please.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Make sure we look
Any
at that.
questions?
Questions for Hannah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anyone else want to speak to us? Okay. All right. So we are going to move forward and do a couple of quick things so that we can get to the meat of our meeting here. First one is consent agenda. Need a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
I just have a quick name correction on the minutes.
Sure.
Should I say it now? Or do we have to take them out
Should
officially?
we take them out officially?
I mean, it's just,
Just for a name change.
just for a name
it's just,
change.
Edward's name was said as Everett. Charlene, if you can switch it to Edward.
Oh, sorry about that. Now I'm just gonna call him Everett every time I see him. Okay.
It was hard to hear in Sudbury because of those fans, so I blame the fans.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, all those that are in favor of the consent agenda with the name change to Edward, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Superintendent's report.
Just a couple of brief things. Recently, a Front Porch Forum posting by a bus driver who appears to live locally spoke to concerns about a bus being driven off a road in Brandon, and he spoke to his concerns with wanting to go to the Brandon Select Board and ask some questions. I was out of the country when I read this, but I did check, and I just wanted to clarify for you, in case you saw it, that it was not one of our bus drivers or one of our buses. We believe it may have been a contracted bus driver for another school district who needs to drive through Brandon for whatever purpose their route has. However, we will look into whether or not his concerns are also our concerns, and if so, the appropriate route would be to talk directly with the town. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I didn't know if you had read that one. My first question when I read it is this us? And why am I reading about it on Front Porch Forum? So in case that was your question, I wanted to clear that up.
He went to the select board meeting last night, and I was there as well on Monday night, and he was very clear about that. He didn't want to misunderstand.
That's great,
Yeah.
that's great. And, you know, the concerns are something that I want us to look into and see if we concur, then, you know, we should support that request.
Great.
I do want to remind you that there is a joint board retreat on November 13th from 5 to 9 p.m. With Susan Morganson, who did the PG 101 training. And it's about your ends policy. That retreat is about the ends policy. I think that's all I have for right now. The teacher negotiation session that is next scheduled is October 28th for an exchange of, actually
Is it
lost
just-
touch. Ground rules.
It's ground rules,
And
right?
setting up meeting dates.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, we're gonna move into governance process, community linkage. First thing we'll talk about is Harvest Festival. Barbara was there, and John and Derek and myself. And, I guess we'll just take a couple of minutes, and does one of you want to, say how it went?
Well, I was there for 5 minutes, so I didn't.
I didn't tell anybody that.
Oh,
so-
but I'll cop to it. It was a really nice event, but I wasn't doing too much board-wise.
Okay.
We had a great-looking tent, and I heard back from people who had come to speak to you that they were very pleased that the board was being represented there, and they had a nice interaction with.
Great.
Yeah, I think it was valuable that we were there. We only talked to a handful of people, but some of those conversations were good. So I think it's working, but slowly, and I think it will get better as time goes on.
Great. Yeah, we had well, from my perspective, and you guys can chime in, as soon as they would look at our tent and they would see anything related to school, and they would make a wide swing around. So unless we were like, hey, you, meaning like we knew them, because otherwise it's kind of weird, they would just pass by. And so, but I think the more that we're out there and the more they see us and the more we continue to engage the public, I think the more they'll be willing to come forward and talk to us.
Maybe if you have a jar of candy corn, if you guess the amount, that will be a draw.
We're gonna have, or hand out candy to the kids, you know, here's some candy, where's your parents? You know, I don't know. But anyway, so, that was Harvest Festival. So we didn't get a lot of interaction on our questions or whatnot, but we did have that presence, and I think that was felt throughout that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I would agree. I think that Bill Moore was on the PA system frequently announcing different things that were going on, and he would always announce that we had a booth there, that we were looking to talk to people about different issues. So it was getting out there into people's ears.
mm-hmm, yeah.
Well, I would just be curious to ask what our learnings were, because as we sort of develop more of that strategic items at different events, I don't know if it would be helpful to have more people, or, you know, like, obviously, having a candy jar, candy is one takeaway. I remember we had quite a bit of success when we were doing the community surveys there, and I know that you were like out there, you know, really soliciting people to, so I don't, you know, if it's not sitting behind a table, maybe it's sort of.
We did try to pull people in by being out there, and they just kind of, they weren't, yeah, they just weren't into that this year. I'm not, you know, last year I didn't really have a problem with them. Everybody kind of went by all the tables last year. This year I didn't really see that. They kind of pick and chose where they went, and we were right in the middle. It's not like they had to pass us whatever side they wanted to be on, so. It's kind of like being by the trash at the homecoming game. So they had to come near us. So anyway, but yeah. What I did learn from that, from the people that did fill out our survey question, was that a lot of people, although they're nervous about a 5 through 8 middle school, here, bringing our 5th and 6th graders in, they are very much amenable to at least getting a quote as to what it would look like and how much it would cost.
So that's
So.
good.
So that's a good move, or at least that tells me something from the people we talked to.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, well, maybe when we break out into groups, we can talk a little bit more offline about, you know, sort of what the engagement might look like moving forward.
Yep.
Because that could be useful, you know, as a takeaway.
Sure. OVUHS homecoming recap. That was Derek and I, and that was our first foray into seeing the public this year, and that was easier pulling the teeth of people there than it was at Harvest Fest. Lots of people didn't, you know, we asked the question of what they wanted a Otter Valley student to be when they graduated, and most people wanted them to make a difference and be happy and do the thing they love the most. So that was kind of the answer there. Some people didn't want to talk to us. Some people, you know.
Right.
But I thought it was easier to talk to people there. They were more willing to come up to us, figure out what we were doing. So,
Yeah,
anyway.
it was a good location, I think, and I don't know, the venues may be different. People had some downtime.
Sure.
You know, they're waiting in line for hamburgers, or, you know, it's halftime at the game, or, you know, so it's more of a captive audience to talk to. I went to the bonfire.
Yep.
And hung out with the adults there. And I went to the raft race and talked to people there, and just to let them know there was a board member around. And it was well received.
Good.
People made some comments. It was good. You know, it was good to see a board member at the occasion. So
Nice.
those kinds of little things will dribble out in terms of perception, I think.
Absolutely. Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is the OCA Sudbury Celebration of Learning, which is actually moved to October 21st. It is not the 17th. Tom sent out an email, so just make sure everybody knows that. It is on the 21st. The Sudbury Road Race is this Saturday. I have to find out information about it. I'm not going to be able to be there for that, but we need to have some people who are willing to man our table and set up our easels and whatnot and be there to engage the public. I'm not sure how many people we'll see there. And I'm also going to reach out to Whiting and their fall festival the next week so that we can have a board presence there as well.
What time does Sudbury start?
So I think it's like 9:30, so if we were able to be there at 9, set up and because I think the first race starts at 9:45, if they've done it the way they've always done it in the past.
Okay.
Yep.
We're gonna be setting up the calendar. I'm gonna work with Barbara and Bonnie tonight.
Okay.
And that's I have sort of list of action items that I've been thinking offline about, so that maybe we could have a shared calendar. So as things come up, you know, you guys get a notification or something, because if you're like me, you have like 6,000 calendars and dates going around everywhere. So I think that could be a nice consolidated way. I mean, some things are gonna be evolutionary, so, obviously, habitually, we have to then check that calendar regularly, and if we're not, then it's kind of not gonna be a useful tool. But you can also sync up your Google calendars, your personal with others. So we can sort of talk about that process a little bit. But I think that could be some useful way to just, as dates come up, be able to have that as a reference so that we can be a little bit more proactive, with our dates and our engagement.
So the next thing on our agenda is the viability guidelines update. Did you want to speak to that, or was I speaking to that?
Well, yes, I just wanted to make sure it was a line item, because
Mhm.
it is something that we need to resolve, on different levels, so.
Okay.
I do
Fair.
have a question on that one,
Sure.
Lori. And maybe it's just because I don't understand, I'm not getting the message out of the first sentence in the second paragraph.
No, I'd have to read it to know.
Okay, I'm going to read it to you. It says, class size guidelines in the supervisory union may vary as necessary to reflect the differences among school districts due to geography and other factors, such as school size and programmatic needs. I'm just not getting the message in that sentence. It would seem to me as though the class sizes may vary due to those reasons, but the guidelines are static, and that's the reason we developed the guidelines, was to have those varying class sizes bounce against the guidelines to determine viability.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So how did you want to, so what did you want to change it, are you
Well-
taking out some of it?
I think if you take guidelines out,
Okay,
it seems more logical to me.
okay. So class size in the supervisory union may vary as necessary to reflect differences among.
Because I wouldn't think the guidelines would vary.
Okay. No, the guidelines shouldn't vary. They're there because they're guidelines.
Right.
So, okay.
Are we actually drilling down what that's gonna look like for each school? And the only reason I bring that up is because Bill had sent that article, and obviously there are various factors, within, class size. So like a class size at Neshabie may be different than a class size at Sudbury, as to what might age as far as when the conversations need to start.
So I think what the issue is, for me anyway, is that the box here that's on the viability policy, those are our guidelines as to what an optimal class size is, K through 3 being a minimum of 12, optimal is 14 to 18, but a maximum of 22.
Okay.
The thing that I think is most important for us is to identify when we need to have a discussion about a school being possibly too small. So does that mean OCA is less than 90 kids? Does it mean a school being less than 90 kids? Is that when we have the discussion?
Well, that's
So this box, that's optimal to my knowledge, or to my mind, but it's when it's too small.
Right.
And when we have to start having a discussion about, do we want to do something? Do we need to think about something else other than closing schools? I mean, this is not just we're below 90, so we're closing the school. It's more of a, okay, let's open up the discussion. Let's talk about this and see what's going on.
And I guess my question too is that number, does that vary based on the school? Where population,
So if I can help, when this was drafted coming out of the task force and the initial discussion that this board had when they first got it, they really looked at the minimal class sizes. And so which is 12 at K3 and 16 at 4-6. Actual class sizes may vary because a classroom at Sudbury, classroom at Sudbury is actually smaller than a classroom at Leicester. So it can't have physically as many kids in it as another, so it may vary, and that's why there are optimal ranges and there's a minimal and maximum. The viability policy speaks to 96 students K6, which is really adding up every minimal.
right.
Right.
So if everybody were at minimal class sizes, is that the tipping point for when a school is too small to be viable?
And
what the policy in front of you suggests is that that's the tipping point to start that discussion.
Okay.
So this is what came out of the task force. I don't believe you're acting on this tonight. Are
So,
you?
I was hoping that we could at least have a first draft reading of it tonight and approve it so that then we could have 30 days to finally.
Sure.
That was kind of my hope. So, and I liked, taking out the word guideline makes sense. So, and if everybody else has had a chance to read this, or if you want to wait another month, but I think sorry, go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
you
go
finish.
for it. Nope.
Well, I mean, my first concern was that it's 96 students and we're already at 93 for OCA last
Are
year.
you
so
including the?
It's K through 6 is what this policy says, K through 6.
Yep.
And we're K through 6 for last year was 93.
Is there only 93?
It's in the same packet of everything.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I was just
Okay.
looking at it. So are we, if we're approving this, we're already saying, okay, that's year one? I mean,
I was thinking we had more than that. I thought we
it
had.
says OCA total K through 6 enrollment, 93 for fiscal year 18-19.
And you're
Okay.
actually down 5 students this year.
Okay, so Mr. Mathis, Dr. Mathis, sorry.
Bill.
Hey, that works too.
Yeah, that works. If you look strictly at the research literature, there's no such thing as being too small in terms of classrooms and schools. That's in theory. Practicality is something else. If I read the policy correctly, what it is these are trigger marks for the superintendent to blow her whistle and say, we got to look at that. And then you make an individual decision that 93 is in fact okay or not. But it's just a tipping point, and every set of circumstances is different.
Right, okay.
And that's how we have to message it.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
it's not
Community.
it's not a decision that if we reach that number or fall below it, we close a school.
That's correct.
That's not what this is.
No,
It's an indicator that
You need to look at it.
we need to look closely at this and monitor it, and have some discussions with communities about what's going on.
Right. Well, and to Bill's point, in that same research, it's if all things are equal. So it's to the children's benefit, the students' benefit, assuming that the school provides equal opportunity as the other schools in the district. So, I think that is where the conversation comes up, even with taxpayers, right? Because if we want to keep the school open and we want to keep services equal, there's a cost involved to that. And, it has to be rolled into the budget. It's not like it's not a magical thing that happens.
well, even though we're only at 93 students currently, we don't have any plans to close. I mean, it's not even an inkling in our mind right now. At
I
least I
just
don't
wanted
think
to
it
point
is.
it
Not
out,
until-
that's all.
So,
Not until December, when we get the information about healthcare.
okay, Derek, there's the door. No, yeah, Bonnie.
I think the only thing I'm going to say is something I've said a myriad of times before, and I don't know what numbers tip what conversation, but I would hope when we get to that point where something trips a conversation, that we keep in mind at least 2 questions that I think are essential questions. And the first is being, how do we offer our youngsters the education that they both need and deserve, the full benefit of educational opportunities at a cost our communities can afford? That's sort of the bailiwick for me. I know and I agree with Lori, it's not an inkling that we're going to close whatever school has, or the school that has 90 youngsters. I do know there are schools in the state of Vermont that are staying open at the expense of youngsters. Every year they cut something else. They cut minutes of PE, they cut minutes of art, they go from a 1-day-a-week librarian to a half-a-day-a-week librarian. The focus is keeping the school open. I'm not anti-small school. I just want us to continually realize that we will probably reach a point where we have to have difficult decisions. Because to keep a school open, in my opinion, at the expense of the only voice that doesn't sit at this table, which are the kids, I think is not a place where we want to be.
And we have to look at the fact that, even though we have reconfigured the 3 small schools, we have been able to add back things that they did not have, such as libraries, such as, other things.
Because we reconfigured.
Because of the reconfiguration and because of us being a unified district. Yes.
There are state minimums in terms of the curriculum, so that is a protection. And the equal opportunity thing is very different at the elementary level than the high school.
Exactly.
So I guess the question is other than whatever this number turns out to be, whether it stays 96 or whether we change it to something else, is there anything else regarding the viability policy that people have an issue with? Or don't like, want to change? Yeah, John, sorry.
So if we do this and automatically there's one school that gets triggered, what's the time frame? Like if we say, okay, 83 students is fine, when do we reassess?
The policy speaks to a 3 consecutive year average. So I think that as you approach that, it would be an annual discussion until
Okay.
it's no longer an issue.
Okay.
That's how I would interpret that.
Did you have something else?
Oh, the one change I would make is to the agenda, not to the title of the policy.
Not to the
which is
policy.
correct.
Okay.
Mr. What?
He would change the agenda, not the policy.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So,
I had no idea what a viability policy was.
oh, great, okay, right.
Well, that has to do with the title too, though, so if that's a concern. is
So
there-
do you think we should change the title of the policy?
No,
Okay,
it's
Okay.
perfectly fine.
okay. So do we leave it at 96? What's your pleasure? I'm happy, I mean, we did the 96, I think you had 90 before, and we changed it to 96 because we were looking at the minimals and saying, okay, if there was a minimums in each class, we'd get to 96 students.
Right.
So do we
So
want
there
to
was
leave
some
it at,
rationale for how we got to 96.
that's how we got to 96.
Which makes sense.
I
And
think it does
If we
make
created
sense.
another number, it wouldn't have sense behind it.
Right.
So,
I mean, just
Yeah,
because we
yeah.
know that there's 93 kids as of
Yeah.
last year in October, and now there's 88, that should not change how we look at this policy, or why that number should change.
And the 3-year average gives you a softer impact, too.
That's right, exactly.
It's a trigger.
Okay, right, it is, it's
trigger
true.
for conversation.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, does somebody want to make a motion about this viability policy?
I'll move it.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. Any other discussion? And we are making the one change of taking the guidelines out of that first paragraph. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those that approve the viability policy as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those that oppose? Abstaining? Okay, the first draft of the viability policy has been approved. It will come back to us for a second reading in 30 days, so, what's today? So it will come back to us at our November 20th meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, it's breakout session time.
Question out there.
Oh, sure. Oh, sorry. Yes, sir.
So since ICA is already under that number, it'll take 3 years before it actually triggers that conversation then?
No, so it triggers the conversation that we will talk about it now, that they are below that 96. That doesn't mean that we would do anything to the configuration or to anything that's going on out there at this time.
But it may impact
But-
how we speak to the communities in that
Sure,
school.
yes. And it also allows the communities to know that we are looking at it, and it's not, and it should not be a surprise if we decide in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years that we need to do something different.
So that's where the 3 years comes in.
Right, it gives us time to let the community know what we're doing.
I presume it's a rolling 3-year average.
Yes.
So will it be retroactive then?
Retro, oh, you mean like because of last, no, I would say that it would start this year, since we just enacted the policy. This year, I would think it would
What was the
start.
first reading?
Yeah, it was the first reading, we haven't even approved it the second time yet, so.
Not a policy yet?
It's not a policy yet, that's true. Bonnie?
This may be a question for Jean. Jean, in this page that has the 3-year
Yep.
averages, Are we at the point where we can add the 1920 data for some of these?
We are. We just completed the 1920 data. I don't have it with me. It's on my
Okay,
desk.
no, that's okay. We can just throw it in here.
But I do know that OCA is down by 5 students as of October 1st, 1919.
Okay.
I mean,
2019.
Wow, where have you been?
Where have you been?
You've been in Tuscany, so it's your old school. Yeah, okay.
Modern day is anything beyond 1500 AD.
That's funny.
Okay, so yeah.
Thank you.
So does that answer your question, Russell? Okay,
Does that
great.
make you feel confident in my numbers there, Bonnie?
Yeah, it does.
All
But
right.
speaking of history, oh, never mind, I'll tell you later. Never mind.
So do you want to start out the breakout sessions as far as, letting everybody know what you're doing?
Yeah.
All right.
Once we break out, I'll circle around.
Okay, so we're gonna break out into our same groups as last time. So we'll have a communications group, we'll have the middle school group, and strategic board engagement as our third group. And then for anybody who's here, join in any group that you like, or just hang out and listen to what's going on. We will come back together at 6:45. Did we do this well? Oh, we have.
Doing well.
I know we are. So we'll come back together at like 20 after 7 to talk about what we've talked about, and come to get back together as a group. Okay.
You did such a good
Okay.
job.
So I'm gonna pull us back together. It is 7:28. So who wants to go first?
Becky does.
Yeah, we will, so I
All
don't
right.
forget.
So she doesn't forget.
So we're gonna talk about the middle school model report out first. Okay.
So we had a lot of discussion, and it feels like the next step is to take money out of our reserve to get the blueprint so that we can give the
Concept.
community.
Concept.
Yes,
right.
concept, not blueprint. Oh my gosh, you're right.
I planted that seed in her brain.
Yes, you
Sorry.
did.
I don't want to be on camera.
To get the concept right, we're not getting blueprints, just the concept. So we would have an idea about how much it would cost, so we would know whether we would want to even move forward with the idea or not.
Okay. So is that gonna need a motion tonight about taking that money out of our approval fund, or next
I
month?
would recommend that you put that on the agenda next meeting so
Okay.
that it's duly warned.
Yes.
Great. Okay, perfect. And were you talking about non-binding questions, or is that not?
We didn't
part of-
get far in there, right? We're just.
We
chatting.
did mention that, some non-binding things, but I think, questions, but I think also putting the money to get the concept also sort of maybe helps
Okay.
think of those questions.
Can we get a rough estimate of what that would cost, the concept piece?
I think that Brenda
We
said
already
it was
did that
50.
at the last meeting, and I think she said like
Yeah, it was
45,000.
like 45.
It was in last meeting's minutes when Brenda was with
Yeah,
us.
45,000 sounds right to me.
Originally, we were thinking it was 112. That's why
Right.
we were like, ooh, that's.
Yeah.
And then when she said 45, and we looked
Yeah.
at a reserve fund.
Right, so we will warn that for next meeting.
40 to 50,000.
Yeah.
So, can I
Okay.
just ask the enhanced middle school group then, how does that sort of impact what we're bringing to the community? Because I had spoken with these guys about engagement, and do we still want to sort of make an effort, over the next weeks to let people know that this is something we're doing as a board, or like what are your feelings on that? Because that's going to sort of impact,
That should go into your weekly column, which needs to get started.
yeah, we can do that.
I think it would be to everyone's betterment that we just continue to put information out as it comes.
Okay.
I think that's a decision we kind of came to today, that it really makes the most sense to go out and have some concepts that we can really speak to when we speak to people. So letting people know that that's what we're about to do only makes sense to me.
Okay, and there was a big push to sort of get that information, before January 1st, if this was gonna be a line item in the budget. Since that's shifting a little bit, we could still, because I sort of said to these guys, January 1st, that means we have about 6 weeks, because we would really wanna have a good read by December 1. That sort of shifts things a little bit if we're, so I guess I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as getting in front of the community. We can still get in front of the community and say, this is what we're doing, and we're going to be taking it out of our reserve funds because we feel it's important to be able to give people, some real numbers, and we're taking this to the concept phase, and you'll be seeing more information about that. But, it's not necessarily, like I said to these guys, we may need to get
like at Hannaford, or, because there was some, well, I'll let these guys talk about what the feedback was from Harvest Fest, but that sort of shifts things a little bit, you know what I mean, as far as.
Well, I would say if people were watching on PEG TV, they'd already see that, so there's no reason why we shouldn't share that with everyone.
Oh, I agree 1,000%, and it just changes the aggressiveness of the timeline, I guess, is where I'm going, with that. And then maybe it'll be helpful too, once we sort of engage the architect and get the concept, to understand what that timeline looks like. So if we engage that architect, in 2 months, we'll have something by January 1st, or, to have some of those harder dates.
Sure.
So we can communicate that out. Okay.
Great, thank you.
That's enough, right?
Exciting. It's kind of exciting though, don't you guys feel like you got something done tonight?
Yeah, it's good.
Yay, go team.
Who wants to go next?
I think you guys should go next.
Okay. Who's reporting out?
Bonnie.
Look at Bonnie.
Well, let's start with Harvest
I don't think you
Festival.
want me
What
to
were some of the
report out.
takeaways that we sort of said from Harvest Festival as far as engaging the community? From a strategic board engagement.
So we should probably alter the way that we do it and maybe have some scripting, so we can, in an organized way, go out and be more proactive about getting opinions from people, not just going and accosting them in lines, etc.
It's kind of fun. No.
Yeah.
And then also that as far as the environment of the Harvest Festival, maybe engaging was a little more challenging.
Right. In other places, there's been success on like voting day, you were saying, where people kind of expect to be approached with information, whereas at Harvest Fest, they're there to make their leaf people, and not necessarily there expecting information from the school board.
And with that said, does it make sense for us to be at the race, the Sudbury race? Or, it's never gonna hurt. But it could be a little less formal, possibly, if we're there and we're with our, our board fobs and, I think that that's something we need to talk about, you know what I mean? Because we want people's,
I think it's important to be there, but I don't think we have to go with anything. I don't think we have to ask that question anymore, since we've already answered the question ourselves as to, do you want an estimate? Well, I don't think we don't need to ask that question anymore. I think it's important that we're there with those fobs on, just walking around, and saying hi to everyone, doing the kindness rule that Jean has implemented, and just being like, hey, how are you? And just letting people, I'm from the school board, or, and I'm just curious how how you're feeling, how we're doing, I don't know, and just something like that. Just have a normal conversation and not actually be asking anything of anybody right now.
And
Or-
can I engage our ambassadors on that question? As far as the board being at community events, and sort of approaching people, and do you guys feel that that's valuable? Do you feel like it's sort of invasive? Like, I would be curious to know. I know it's sort of a
I would think
personal.
that, like at the race, even if you had on a shirt that says, ask me, or, some little.
Let's talk.
School board member, let's talk, yeah.
Something that'll catch
Yeah.
their attention and,
Sure.
That's
just so, like you said, you
Sure.
can have just, like, we know each other.
Hey, we got an in with Angela too.
Goes into, and if, I don't see any reason why if you go there this week to that race, share with them, what our next steps are. What are we doing right now?
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think a lot of people do know that.
No, you're right. Yep.
Right, even as much as what we're trying to do, we just gotta keep telling them and inviting them to come, and we really do want their input.
Right, absolutely.
We care.
Yes.
That kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
So,
What do you think?
Just off the top, I'm gonna say that if you have children within the age group of whatever the issue is, you're gonna get more feedback. But if you have children that are at different levels, you may not get the feedback that you want. Beyond that, I don't have an opinion.
that's okay.
It makes sense. So there's, there are, again, from an engagement standpoint, there are opportunities, middle school basketball tournament versus elementary school basketball tournament, or, so that is good input, because it is a way to sort of.
It might more focus the conversation depending on what situation you're attending.
The tricky part, though, is that it's the elementary school kids' parents that are likely to be impacted by this, because it's years down the road, versus if they're in middle school now. So we have to think about that when we're talking to people a little bit, but.
I don't think I think it would be good. We already have the information about the middle school model pamphlet that we were handing out at Harvest Fest. I don't see why we can't take, because we have a lot of them left over, why we can't just be handing those out at our next two events and just be talking about middle school model. We can always talk about other things if people have questions or whatnot, but maybe our focus right now is the middle school model.
Yeah, and Bonnie had brought up a good point. Even talking points wise, it's important for us all to be on the same page. If someone comes up to us and asks us why it's beneficial or why we're moving in this direction, and it was really the community input that sort of steered us in this direction, and it also supported what we heard in the presentation. But to that point, what we're going to do as a comms group, and I'll let Derek talk to that a little bit, is to send some talking points out regarding the middle school model and why it's beneficial and why it supports our curriculum. And then collaboratively, Bill is going to be finding some research articles that also speak to that. Hopefully, he's going to look into it, and if it's a huge task, we're going to regroup. But likely, there's at least a few research articles that we can read, and then maybe our comms group can sort of pull out some key talking points, and I can work with Derek on that. He keeps saying be careful about conversations and emails, so maybe we start a Google Doc. I am not savvy, okay, when it comes to bylaws, and so don't be afraid to just say, Allison, take this here, or tell me where to go with it. But I do want to try to be working in between meetings. 4 weeks is a long time to go to not have any movement, in what we're trying to do.
So you can gather information. I heard you giving a summary too, so you could probably speak more to it. You can gather information, you can create a Google Doc, which ultimately becomes a public document
Sure.
at the next meeting.
Okay.
But you can't make any decisions, you can't be, all discussion has to happen in public.
Yeah.
But if you're gathering the information needed for
That's
that
what I thought.
discussion,
Okay.
that's okay.
Got it, okay, all right, okay.
One of the things you had also mentioned was having a calendar that just has, everybody can just put in events that are happening in our district. And so you can either speak to it or I can, but I think it's a great idea to have it on all of our school websites. I know we have a calendar that.
We started this year an R&E events calendar.
Okay.
That the principals are, we identified things that they're gonna give to us. But if there's anything that you are identifying that should go on there, just funnel it to Melinda or me and we'll get it
Okay.
on there.
You
And
guys
then that's
started,
already
right?
automatically on all school websites, I think.
Okay.
Melinda.
Who's got the flyers?
Yeah, we
Who's got the
can't.
middle school flyers?
I do actually currently.
But I mean,
And I
we
will
made
hand
one.
those off to someone for this Saturday.
I'll take some to Sudbury.
Okay, great. I'll hand them to you as we're leaving. Because they're in the car. It's this Saturday. Yep.
Actually, won't you for anything when you get that far.
I believe the
10
first
o'clock.
race, is it 9:45 or is
Well,
it?
the sign-in is 8:30 to 9:45, and it says
Okay.
10 a.m. start time.
All right, there you go.
But maybe there's also, there's two.
If they're doing the fun run, I don't know if they're doing the fun run. That's usually after the 5K race. I don't know if they're still functioning it that way. So I'll get those to you
Okay.
so that you have those, and then you can either get whatever you have left back to me or whatever, because
Yeah.
we'll want them for the whiting.
I think I can pick them up Thursday.
Okay, sure. Okay,
That's tomorrow.
yeah. I have them in the car. I'll give them to him tonight.
Oh, perfect.
So they're in the car, along with our all the other stuff that I had. So I'll give that to you. Okay, cool. All right, so Derek.
Communications. We talked about the need to have a communications plan that's sort of a 3 points are always good, Bill. Bill's like, let's brainstorm some 3 points. What are they? What could they
3
be?
points, keep it simple,
Right.
elevator speech.
Yeah. So it can change, but what we came up with is educational quality, affordability, and sustaining local communities. It's a nice thing. And all those things that you were talking about in your other groups really are relevant across those. The educational quality issues you can talk about, class sizes, and the pros and cons of class sizes in terms of educational quality, and you can enter into some messaging around that. The 5 through 8 middle school stuff. There's qualitative issues that we need to extract some talking points from the research and the presentations that we have. Affordability. Well, you can talk about class sizes and how that affects affordability, funding mechanisms, or services. How many kids, are you? Can you manage before it gets really expensive? And then you have to decide around affordability. That gets to that question of closure or not. Could even be a local decision, I think, under our taxation in our district. A community could say, you know what, we don't care. We want to keep our school open, and as we crunch the numbers, we say, well, then this is going to be your tax bill. And they say, fine, we're going to do it. So be it. I don't know if that's possible.
That's what used to be possible.
That's what
Yes.
used to be possible.
Not possible now.
That's not going to be possible in the future.
No. Because now it's a combined tax rate across all
The state.
towns, so it's, well, not even that one, I'm talking about the merged district, that
Mhm.
we have a
Oh,
single
right.
tax rate for the entire district, so a community can no longer choose to pay more to keep their school open.
Right.
It's
Okay,
the.
so that's not going to be a viable option.
It's
for
not
affordability.
actually right now.
It's not.
Right, it is not.
That's not right now.
Prior to Act 46, it was.
Affordability, tax rates is certainly a discussion that can be had on that. Sustaining local communities. Again, closing schools or not, or reusing your buildings in some creative ways. Looking at that on a community by community level. Again, some scripted messaging needing to be in the media every week. Or maybe not hopefully every week, but some situations may be at a different calendar schedule, depending on what the media is that you're working with. But we would need volunteers from each town, preferably board members, to reach out to the Front Porch Forum as a mechanism. We need contact lists of various media folks that we would be contacting. We would need scripted messages as time goes on. Probably in between meeting times, we would get scripted messages from the superintendent to the board members for dissemination. Another thing that we mentioned was using these Wednesday nights, advertising these Wednesday nights in community calendars, in newspapers and media. Not calling it a board meeting per se, but calling it Let's Talk. And tonight we're going to be talking about XYZ, and just putting it out there as a calendar issue that's currently, I noticed this currently in the latest issue of the Addison Independent. There's a Let's Talk on a Thursday in, I don't know, Virgins or Bristol, one of those districts that's struggling with how to do this right. And one of the things that they're doing is they're having Let's Talk sessions, which is a community invite situation. So hopefully we would have more folks to come and participate.
Let's talk about that more, and I can work with Derek, to sort of help develop some of that messaging, because that could go out in principal newsletters and that sort of thing, I think, definitely. And that's part of the ambassador sort of, we're calling it ambassador recruitment, but maybe it's a little less formal than that, you know.
I was thinking getting at the point of identifying all the various events and activities that are going on that we might want to be messaging into. The principal's newsletter includes a lot of the local community activities, but that's only for that community. It doesn't get out to, I mean, I get a couple of them because I'm on the board.
Unified district piece.
But on more of a unified basis. And the other thing would be for the ambassadors to be aware of what's going on and then feedback to us, oh, these things that are going on that we might want to have in messaging activity.
And what I can do is I'll set up a spreadsheet and sort of help organize. I'll look at Charlene's notes from tonight, everything you just said, or take a picture and send it to me. But I can start to help organize some of that thought, so we can maybe start peppering in. If you have your 3 talking points, and then you have your various dissemination methods, social media, principles, scripted, front porch forum, you know, so we can start to organize some of that.
And as we realize that certain changes are going to be coming, Bill, in his wisdom, again says there's a 3-point way to communicate that over time. And number 1 is that you tell them it's coming, and number 2, you tell them again that it's coming, and number 3, you tell them again that it's coming, and then you tell them it's time. And so that's the nature of transparency, is that we're trying to communicate with people. And as that goes on, we'll get feedback from people, and then when it's time, the people that are affected the most or have the most passion will certainly surface.
Yeah, and what we need to nail down is really what those messages are right now and start disseminating. So obviously, one is that we're gonna move forward with conceptualizing what this would cost and what it would look like. That's a key message that we need to get out. So we need to craft that message, which we can do offline, and then, you know, we can disseminate it to the board and post it front porch forum and figure that out, okay? So we'll start, that's the work that we'll do between now and the next meeting, okay? And then we actually have some of that activity, and we can start posting about it. Jean had brought up a good point that we always want to post something to front porch forum the day, you know, the day after the meeting, or, you know.
Within a day or so.
Within a day or so. So maybe Derek, you and I can work between tonight and tomorrow to start crafting what that message would look like, that we would disseminate on front porch forum for an update for this meeting. Because she also sends that out to principals, and,
Right.
you know, Facebook and to front porch forum. So we can work together on that, but it's just a sort of a quick hit, high level, what we discussed tonight. I know,
And
thank
another-
you, okay.
Another, if I may, another.
I'm running out of time.
piece for Derek is, if it would be helpful to know if you had point people around the board who said, I can post in my town's front porch forum, or I can post on Facebook.
So we can identify that maybe.
Because I send it out and I don't know where it
Yeah.
goes or who does what, or if they're gonna forget supposed to or not. Some people aren't on Facebook, that's fine, you don't have to be on Facebook to be on the
Right.
school board.
Right.
Some people haven't yet signed up for Front Porch Forum, I encourage you to do so.
Everybody should, just to acclimate. I did, I wasn't.
Just to hear what's
yeah.
going on in your community, you should.
Buy things. Just kidding.
All right, buy thing, no, don't buy.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I thank everybody for all of their input into tonight's breakout sessions. I think it was very informative, and I think it moves us forward to our goals. So I
You guys
really
all
appreciate
agree?
that.
Do you feel like this is a good sort of?
Is this a good
You
use
like
of our
it?
time on that 3rd Wednesday in our second meeting? Yes? Okay, good. All right, work plan development review. I don't think we have anything to really discuss there.
Looking at it in
Calendar
your
question,
next meeting.
not about this calendar
It
meeting.
was November 6th.
I'm bringing you
The
a
date change
monitoring report.
Yep.
Yay.
And you're doing trust fund reviews.
Right, so
And
with
you're
the,
starting your budget process.
so the next monitoring report is a new one. Please make sure you read it before you come to the meeting, ready to discuss, with questions or, praise, whatever. And so now, Bill, you wanted to talk about agendas.
Yeah. Just quickly, there's an obscure Robert's Rules, which is called it's a call to return to the agenda by anybody who wants to, who feels like we're off the agenda. So I was looking at this one tonight, and what did we talk about? The building. What's not on the agenda? The building. I suggest that to get this thing with Robert's rules is that we list in order the things that we're really going to talk about and put them in terms that people will understand. For example, I'm still lost on whatever we said was class size. And if we're talking about class size, we should put class size in the agenda, or the superintendent's evaluation put it in. Lori and I can work on this.
Absolutely. Okay. Perfect. Anybody have any other discussion about the agenda setting, how it looks? Okay. Does anybody else have anything else to come before the board tonight? So the only thing I'm going to put out there is that I think it's important, and this is, I just came to my mind, is that probably as most of you that have kids in school have fundraisers going on and whatnot, or things going on at school. I think it would just be really helpful, or what I would like to do, because we have the camera here, is to let people know what the schools are fundraising, you know, so that people know. You know how sometimes you fundraise and you only go to the certain people, you go the same well time after time after time. I just would like to put it out there so that people might be able to say, oh, Pittsford's selling X, Y, and Z, you know, and so I'm going to go find a Pittsford kid or something like that, or contact the school because they want to help support the school in that way.
That's a cool idea.
So here's what I'm going to do. So Sudbury and Leicester and Whiting right now are selling wreaths. So if you need a wreath, contact them. They are also selling some sort of everything, all occasion wrap and everything like that. So you can do that. I don't know if Pittsford is doing anything at the moment.
PTA at Pittsford is selling those cool reusable plastic baggies that
That's right.
I bought some at open house.
Yep.
Yes. They had a whole slew of stuff. They have Cabot cheese. There was, a lot of it was really local. There was, and I'm not going to get, there was a chocolates one. Coffee, a local coffee. I'm not going to get all the companies. I know they also did like Yankee Candle.
Right, Neshabie is doing Yankee Candle right now as well.
But Pittsford, other than Yankee Candle, everything else was local, which was really neat this year. And again, I don't have the exact names.
It's on their principal's newsletter.
True. Right, but public doesn't get that newsletter. So that's why it's important that everybody knows. So if you need a wreath, contact Sudbury or Leicester Schools. If you need candles, contact Neshabie or Lothrop. Also, Neshabie is selling soup mixes and dips and cheesecake mixes. So if you need something like that, contact Neshabie. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else out there. So anyway.
Yeah, popcorn.
Who's doing the popcorn?
Is that Boy Scouts?
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Oh,
All
kindergarten.
right, so kindergarten. And Neshabie?
So it might be K1, 2? It's like
Maybe.
maybe a few grades.
Yeah.
Call Neshabie. I guess that's all I can tell you if you need popcorn. So anyway, so I just wanted to put that out there. I'd like to keep that so people know what the schools are doing. So anyway, unless everybody disagrees with me, I would like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.